Welcome to your world news station. Today we shall be covering some news about Russia and Japan, both of them. So let's start with Zoe.
The Crimean War is a significant conflict involving Russia, the Ottoman Empire, France, Britain, and Sardinia. The war is being fought over the control of territories in the declining Ottoman Empire. It is exposing the weaknesses of the Russian military. In the aftermath of the Crimean War, Russia, facing considerable internal pressure to reform, leading to the emancipation of the serfs. This reform is aiming to modernize Russian economy and society by freeing millions of serfs who previously were bound to land in their landlords. Serfs are getting granted personal freedom and the right to own property. They were also provided with land allotments. However, the former serfs have to make redemption payments to the state. Unlike Russian serfs, the freed American slaves were not provided with land or significant economic support. That's all for our top story tonight. Back to you, Layla.
Well, that sure is a story, Zoe. Looks like we have some information from Cadence, too. On to her.
In the text, we explore the rise of intelligentsia in Russia, a group of educated individuals who were driven by radical ideas to reform the country's political and social structures. They believed Russia needed to break free from oppressive rule of Tsar and created the social base of equality and freedom. Alongside this, we see the growth of anarchism, where anarchists sought to abolish all forms of government, believing that true freedom could only come through the violent revolution. A key figure in this movement was Bakunin, who argued that existing social and political systems were so corrupt that they needed to be completely destroyed to build a new society. This period also saw the spread of Marxist ideas, particularly those of Vladimir Lenin, and the government's repressive policies such as censorship and persecution, which fueled the revolutionary fervor. Additionally, the military defeat in Russo-Japanese War exposed the weaknesses of Tsarist rime and ignited the widespread unrest. These periods of change highlight the increasing revolutionary sentiment that led to significant upheaval in Russia, setting the stage for major transformations in the early 20th century.
Thank you, Cadence. Now it seems like we are going to have a couple words from Carly. Let's head over to her.
Thank you, Layla. Yes, there has been some governmental shifts recently here in Russia. In my opinion, one of the biggest ones being the emancipation of slaves. Basically, Alexander II has put out this policy where slaves are almost tied to their villages. They have to remain in their villages until they can repay the aristocracy. Another big one I've noticed would be the zemstos. That's where, like, your middle-class people, like the businessmen, the doctors, the lawyers, the just professionals, working class has been promoted to a more governmental position, and he did this so that they can have more experience in the government. And they don't have any national footholding, mostly just regional stuff like schools and roads. I've also noticed that there's been a division between the government and the people. I mean, they're not one. A lot of your business professionals, the working class, they don't like the government. But you also have your more articulate intellectuals, also known as the intellectia. They also don't like the government, but they're the more anarchists. They don't want they don't want any government at all. And if I'm being honest, I just don't see the Tsar rule lasting much longer.
In
the 19th century, Japan's government had a mix of old and new systems. It faced money problems because it relied too much on its farming and had to spend a lot of money on its military. Despite these issues, Japan's education and culture grew a lot. Many Japanese people could read and write. In fact, over 40% of men and 50% of women were literate by 1859. China, on the other hand, had a more rigid government system. Its economy was not growing at all, partly because of a growing population and inefficient government. Japan was able to adapt to pressure from Western countries while China struggled. Japan's economy grew faster with more trade and manufacturing, and China didn't. By the 20th century, Japan and China had taken different paths. Japan had a more successful industrial nation, while China eventually became communist. Today, China's economy is growing rapidly, and both countries share a common cultural heritage.
We have word that interviewer Zoe has scored an interview with Sergey Witt. Let's head over to that.
Okay, so you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, okay, I'm currently a statesman, and I'm seeking a career position.
What do you mean?
I guess I want to be the prime minister, of course.
All right, and what do you think Russia should do?
Well, I mean, if you look to the west, they're doing things pretty good over there, if you know what I mean.
I don't know what you mean. Can you elaborate? Okay, back to you, Layla.
That was a very interesting interview with Sergey. On to you, Lisa Marie.
Okay, so for my topic I'm going to talk about today is industrial and political changes happening in the Meiji State, which is located in Japan, as well as the Industrial Revolution happening in Japan. So there's many uproars going on and uprisings by the samurais, and this is all due to them being confiscated by government-backed bonds, which is only because tax brackets are widening on agriculture. So basically just squeezing the society for more money, taxes, and so forth, as well as tariffs. So overall, the government is just implementing new systems to get tax money and so forth. So the Industrial Revolution is happening to help this kind of, because the economic structure is now depending on the destruction of older restrictions. So restrictions placed by old empires or old leaders. And then the government initiation is taking place as well. So this is basically meaning they're dominating manufacturing and transportation networks, state operations of mines, and then plants, specifically metallurgical plants, and then shipyards. So basically, they're just creating a new economic system to try and help the tax bracket not be so widened on agriculture, just trying to calm the whole society down, as well as just trying to bring the individuality back for the samurais. So all of this is happening at the same time, and the system is making the samurais kind of create more political uproar because they're not used to a new economic system. So hopefully this changes for the future.
News from Japan. As Japan industrializes, many things are being affected, like schooling. Even with the disrupting population growth in Japan, the government has now introduced a universal education system. A new culture seems to take control as they copy Western fashions to get more and more modern. With the Sino-Japanese War going on, Japan is becoming more poor in many basic materials. With that, they now have their women in silk production sweatshops. This war has taken a toll, but they hope to expand and maybe even form an alliance or two. As Japan modernizes, we can see some political tension. So far, the government has had to dissolve their national legislature, Diet, which is composed of a lower house, called the House of Representatives, and a higher house, which are the House of Councilors. And now they have to call for some new elections for those. And with the attempted assassinations going on, who knows?